Kenny, welcome.
Thank you, Charles.
Great to have you here, and
Pleasure.
yeah, we're super excited about your new album, which I want to talk about, Unstoppable.
Yeah.
But wanted to kind of go back a little bit and talk to you about your career in the business.
Yeah.
The business, the music business, the artist business.
Yep.
And your relationship and experiences that have kind of brought you to this point, and then we would love to get into the record a bit more. So you've got a new record coming called Unstoppable.
Indeed.
Which we're excited to work with you on, and it's coming out in August.
It is.
And then it's going to be followed by a best of tour in 2026. It would be great just to maybe start with the title of the album and sort of where does that come from? Can you kind of frame that for me a bit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you're making an album, you do your 10, 11, 12 tracks, whatever. In this case, I think it's 11 we've settled at now. And there has to be one on there that becomes the obvious title. And I work with my nephew, Nathan Thomas. He's also one of the writers on the album. And my wife, Francisca, she's one of the writers on the album, as you know. And I worked with Nathan. He started that song. He really got that one going. And I came in on it, on the back end of it, after he'd sort of written the bulk of it. But I did a lot of changes to it, as you do, to shape it where it is now. And I just remember at the time thinking, this is, quite a good title track. And the word Unstoppable, and I couldn't think of any album that's been called that. I didn't exactly Google it because I didn't want to be disappointed, but I thought, I can't remember it in my own memory, so that'd be fine. And then I thought, well, also it's kind of indicative of it resonates, if you like, with my career, which has ironically been almost unstoppable in some ways. As well, it's more of a miracle, really. Then it should be called Miracle more than Unstoppable. I look back and go, wow, 35 years or a bit longer than that if you count when I actually started in 1988 at Eddie Grant's studio in North London. So I thought, and then there's another part where I thought, well, if you're calling it Unstoppable, that's tempting fate, because ultimately everything is stoppable, in the final analysis. But it's a good title, it works, and the song itself is really nice.
It's a great song.
Yeah, we've written it, and it's got a pop edge to it, and then Oppo Loppo has taken it in another kind of direction with some slight sort of darkness to the structure and the chords, and it's great.
Yeah, it's got great groove to it.
Yeah, it's really turned out nice.
And I want to come back to Oppo Loppo, but just staying with the sort of Unstoppable aspect of your career. So if we go back to kind of 1991, I guess you're 22, 21, 22.
1990 is the start, really.
1990, and you're signed.
Yes.
By Chrysalis, by their imprint,
Cooltempo.
So let's go back to 1990 and what the world was like then, as as someone who was into music, being inspired by music, wanting to make a career in music consciously. You were looking for that.
Yeah, I mean, you've come off the back of an amazing decade, the 80s, where certainly soul music, black music, the rhythm and blues coming out of America, and the jazz funk and the jazz fusion, all of that, a hugely creative decade, and the output was enormous. So anyone who's locked into the soul scene then was would know that it was a great time for that. So you're influenced by that, and almost become addicted to it. The buying of vinyl. Yeah. Of course, the CD come a bit later, but the only thing you can suddenly say that sort of interrupted it in a nice way or in a very different way was the arrival of 1988. The lights of Danny Rampling playing at the Shum, and the emergence of the Summer of Love and the rave scene, and the house music scene, and what was drifting in from Chicago. You got a bit of a taster of it from Steve Silk Hurley in the 80s, but as it started to evolve and emerge and take hold of the Chicago house scene, that was a real big game changer. Yeah. And also it changed clubland. I mean, I was going, because I grew up on Stamford Hill and Hackney, and I was going to clubs that at the time, some clubs were predominantly white, and some were. The discotheque, your average nightclub.
Yeah.
But then I was going to clubs where I was one of very few white people in there, and I was in there with the right people, with friends of mine, and they were black nightclubs playing some serious stuff, some serious grooves, And then when the rave scene and the house scene came along, you suddenly saw, in London certainly, the black and white people coming together on that scene.
Yeah.
The house scene just brought it all together. Nothing mattered anymore. It wasn't a black club or nightclub. It's just that was the scene.
Yeah.
And we were out in fields illegally by the thousands and hoping not to get raided and stopped. And often that did happen. And then there was the warehouse scene and that changed it. And musically it changed because, it came in with house and the acid house thing. But eventually as time went on, as you know, it started to go more soulful.
Absolutely.
Soulful house started to come in.
And listening to your
debut
record, I was listening to it on the way here today and thinking about other artists of that era that were not necessarily, the club music, but artists that had a bit of that soul and had a bit of the 80s. And I guess Soul to Soul have to sort of come up there in terms of a band that's sort of also 88, 89, kind of so just before your record. And they had this also, slower, more down tempo, but very much groove, very much taking influence from the 80s and soul.
Yeah.
And the song being kind of very central to the music. And I think that early 90s UK sound that starts to fuse club culture, dance music from a UK perspective and a soul perspective, it seems like you entered at that point and had some hits. In the 90s,
I came off kind of the other end of that, didn't I? And with Soul to Soul, it was an unusual time because you could go to a club back then where they were playing some really banging tunes, floor to the floor house, but they'd also throw Soul to Soul in later on, and it was very eclectic in that sense. And I came with that 80s sort of sound. Of course, my first song was that cover version of the Gap Band. Which was a minor hit for them earlier in the 90s, and very risky for me to do so close to theirs in time in a time frame. But it took some courage to do that record, but we pulled it off, and it was it became a hit. But you're right, we were sort of the hangover, if you like, of that sound in a nice way, and we brought a sort of a pop edge to it.
Yeah.
And but it was an interesting time because you could go to a club and there were thousands of them around the UK then, and you could hear a mixture of everything. You could hear some house, you could hear my records, you could hear Soul to Soul, and as time went on, you remember it differentiated, and you'd get DJs that were just playing that one thing, and it sort of became very separate in that sense.
It did, and the music scene and culture kind of it's always moving and always changing. And if we come back to your kind of current record, I think you can still hear some of those influences. You can still hear the club, the sort of that side of it, but obviously the soul, and it's got nods to multiple decades.
Yes,
but sounds like relevant today.
Yes,
completely contemporary because those sounds keep coming back. I think so. I think
cycles. So when you start to hit the age that I am now, and you realise I've now seen not just one or two, probably several cycles in all sorts of areas. Music and fashion. There's shirts that I bought from Paul Smith years ago, and I wish I kept them because I've seen them come back round. I thought, wow,
absolutely,
I should have hung on to that. Yeah. But there's musically, again with production, yes, that's changed in the sense of the way records are made and the sounds, but there's some clever stuff going on in studios now. Yeah. But you can, along with that clever stuff and production values, you can, like I've done, sort of inject your flavour, that bit of 80s, that bit of 90s, and
Yeah.
And a bit of pop as well. I like things that have got a good pop edge to them.
The right balance of pop, and it gets heard.
For want of a better word.
Yeah. So your experience then of having a debut album and having kind of pretty quick success at a young age, and being kind of in the 90s at a sort of peak in the music business, so things are going well. You're on top of the pops. Your records are selling. And life is great. I assume you're busy, you're working hard, it's fast.
It becomes a blur.
Yeah. How does that? What's that experience like for you? And sort of traveling through that that first record and then beyond? Take me through the next part.
Well, there's an anticipation. You sort of, you want the record to go off and become a hit, and then and that's what you're aiming at. And then when it is, there's almost a kind of like an aspect of disbelief of like, wow, it's actually happened. This is beginning now. It's off, and then you really, your feet don't touch the floor, because you are doing TV shows here, and then obviously if this record's starting to take off in another country, you're going to go and do their version of Top of the Pops in multiple countries and their chat shows and all the rest of it. So it's fast paced. And then of course you're releasing another single here, and then I think in the end we notched up 9 Top of the Pops appearances and stuff like that. And it's hectic, but it's fun. And so, of course, youth was on my side, so I'm in my early 20s, and you are enjoying the moment, maybe enjoying it too much at times, you know. But certainly, it was very difficult to balance back then the work output and the need to be here, there, and everywhere doing things, and still being creative and making records and trying to get the next thing in place. Yeah, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah. When you have expectation once you've had a hit. But one thing we were talking about earlier, which I thought was an interesting insight, was just the number of nightclubs that were in existence at that time.
And, too many.
Yeah. And just how big of an industry that was in the 90s, where today I think it's starting to recover a little bit, but obviously it's very different. Times have changed. But as an artist performing, what was that like? You sort of...
Well, you started out with the clubs because that's really kind of all you had. You needed DJ support, so you would travel up and down the country doing enormous amounts of nightclubs, not being paid for it. You're lucky if you got your money for your petrol.
Right.
Often.
And these are PAs. You're doing PAs with a DJ.
Yeah, and you're doing clubs where 95% of the people there are not interested or really, want you to be there.
Yeah, so it's promotional work.
Lots of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes 3 clubs in a night. And I would be travelling often with Shovel, who went on to, a percussionist who went on to, be a part of M People.
Yes.
And, we'd do 3 clubs in a night up in Scotland and travelling here, there and everywhere and getting knocked on the way and not getting the £100 fee that we were due. So our petrol wasn't covered and crazy stuff. But what you are doing is you're slowly making gradually making a fan base.
Yeah.
And of course, when a track becomes a hit, those very same clubs want you back, and this time they want to pay good money to have you there. So it swings and roundabouts.
And were you doing that?
But it's hard work. You had to do all of those clubs up and down the country.
Were you doing it pre-release? Some of that stuff and promoting the song pre-release, and sending out. We were talking about the white label promotions that were going on. All of that is before the record's released.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, before you've even known, you're doing quite a few months of that to get the record known at the club PAs. And then obviously when it goes off, it's different. But then by the time you get into track, single number 2 and 3, you're kind of, the DJs are familiar with you. Yeah. You've got a bit of a fan base. You may have appeared on Top of the Pops once or twice if you're lucky. And then you are kind of up and running. But when you're doing that club circuit, you'll bump into different suspects on the way round. I mean, I remember doing a club, I can't remember where we were, but it was Take That. With Robbie and Gary and the boys, and they were just starting out. They were unknown, and I was kind of more known than them at the time. Yeah. And I remember having a chat with them, and they were doing the rounds, the promotional thing, to get known.
And the other side of that, obviously, being the vinyl and sending out records to DJs and knowing DJs and tastemakers and within the soul scene, obviously, that's a huge part of that scene is the sort of DJ culture, and that's really strong still today.
Yes.
So I imagine you built a lot of friends and relationships in that environment.
I did, yeah. And then there's obviously the Soul Weekenders and the different things you did, and you needed support from them.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what you needed to lock in was obviously the national radio and a TV, and then you're up and running.
Yeah.
But without that grassroots level, that kind of heat on the street thing, of the DJs, you were going nowhere. That was the foundation of it all.
Well, you're building in the club chart, right? To have an argument to go into Radio 1 or whichever station is relevant to make the case for being played. And they'll only really look at you if you're hot somewhere else.
I mean, Outstanding failed the first time in 1990. It went 79 in the charts and back out. And at that point, most labels would have abandoned it and said, let's move on to another single. That one's failed, you know. But it was DJs ringing up Simon Dunmore at Cooltempo and saying, Simon, this record's hot. It's a dance floor filler. You can't let it go. It just hasn't had the time to get where it needs to get to. So then, you know, my manager at the time, Steve Finan, flew over to New York with the multi-tracks because there's no internet then. There's no sending WAVs through WeTransfer.
Insane.
And they recorded a rap in the middle eight of the record, the centre part of the record, and then we came back with it, mixed it here, and then put it out again. And of course, the DJs were quite right.
Yeah.
It built nicely and steadily and became a big record.
Yeah.
But again, it really sort of it nods the head towards the DJs, doesn't it? That they were the foundational aspect of those records back then.
Yeah. Oh, an amazing time, very different time in the business. I mean, as I said to you earlier, I cut my teeth in club promotions probably at the tail end of that, at the end of the 90s. We were still mailing out 12 inches and sort of trying to build that heat. But it's very, very different how we're going to promote your record.
Yes.
We won't be sending out 1,000.
Creature now, isn't it?
It's completely different, yeah. But in the middle there, so you kind of you have that amazing kind of first half of the 90s and with your debut record. And obviously things progress and you've got expectation around a follow-up, I assume, and how that plays out. And the record label's changing as well at that time. I guess Chrysalis is acquired by EMI and the landscape shifts.
Yeah, that was a bit later on, getting the EMI thing coming in. That was, that did change things massively.
Yeah. And what was the experience like sort of on record 2 and sort of your, how you made that record and sort of going into the creative process? Did it feel different?
You mean album number 2? Yeah, record number 2. We were under enormous pressure at that point because we'd sold hundreds of thousands of the first one and obviously the Brit Award nominations and all the rest of it. And so we were under pressure to make that follow-up album. And time is not on your side like it was with album 1. And you've got obviously the powers that be and the big record company now and breathing down the neck. And lots of opinions, and I always used to worry about it because it was this thing of I never understood it, and I don't think I understand it to this day. Is this thing that you have to go to the next level? It's like, what does that mean? So I grow a beard, I dye my hair. I had hair back then. I mean, what's the next level? Define that. What do you actually mean? Because I remember being in the studio with the producer Ian Green and saying, surely we need to do the same again.
Yeah.
Just like really good songs and really good productions and nail it, you know.
Yeah. And
they were like, no, it needs to be this, it needs to be that. And then all these conflicting opinions coming. In the end, it became quite confusing. And then time was running out and certain things happened. It was just an unusual time. And we were so up against it. I remember even going in on a New Year's Day, going to bed very early on a New Year's Eve, which is unheard of for me back in my early 20s. I was a party animal, you know. And then going on New Year's Day to record a vocal because the time was that slim. We needed to get it over the line. And, the record company I'm not sure. It was just too go. And they must have been up against it with people breathing down their necks with the timing of things. And off it went. And as a result of that, I think we had some good tracks on it. And we had some that maybe I look back and see we could have done without that. Yeah. You know, we recorded that under duress.
A different experience then. And you said something earlier today, which I really loved, which is how making this record, Unstoppable, has almost felt like making a debut record again. The pressure wasn't there. You had, it seems like, much more freedom, headspace to create something without those voices interfering.
I've had no pressure because I just made it as I want to do it in my own studio, recording vocals, and then, you know, going backwards and forwards with the tracks with Oppo in Sweden, and writing with my nephew Nathan and my wife, and they're great writers, by the way. And just because they're family doesn't mean they're not individually in their own right great writers. And And I just think it was great. There's songs that didn't make it. There's songs I wrote and I think they're great. There's a couple I didn't put on this album that I've now gone back to and thought, actually, they're really good and they need a few changes and we'll stick them on the next one. But there was no pressure. And I could go into my studio and the clock isn't ticking. I can do a day of vocals and then come back 2 days later into it and go, actually, it's all right. But I think I can do it better. I don't like it. That one, I can do that much better, and I will do it. And I'll just scrap it and redo it all. And I didn't have that luxury on album number 2 in the EMI days. I did on album number 1.
Yeah.
Which is probably why it was so good.
Well, I think, as we were saying, I think often a debut record, is... it doesn't have the pressure, the expectation. No. Even from the artist's perspective, it's you don't know if anyone's going to listen to it, so you're kind of free to create.
Yeah, you don't know where it's going. There's no your expectations are managed in the sense that you don't know what's going to happen. Nothing could happen.
Yeah, but do you think it's part of how building an artist's kind of business and trying to create music that is true to your art form, what you want to create, that hits the zeitgeist of kind of where music is at, having that freedom, it gives you an extra edge?
That's a tricky one because it's going to make it comfortable. It's a tricky one, that the zeitgeist. That's a worrying thing, zeitgeist, because some people actually deliberately make songs and productions and think, it's got to fit in with what's going on. And that worries me because you may get that right or you may normally get that wrong.
Yeah.
Or by the time you put the record out that you think is going to fit in with what's happening at the moment, it's probably that moment's past and it now sounds out of place.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to make the music you want to make. And I remember going years ago to a concert, and it was UB40. It was Wembley, and it was packed. It was a great night, full lineup. Ali Campbell sounding in great voice.
Amazing.
And I just remember him in the middle of it saying how many millions of albums they'd sold. And then at the end of it, he said, "And we've never changed our sound." And I thought, I get that. And then even in the last few months, there were some discussions that Ed was having with someone. I can't remember exactly who, and they were saying Kenny's a strange thing, It's like, what do you do with it? Because he occupies his own lane. And I thought, and I said, Ed, that's a positive, man.
It's a positive.
I said, because if I'm in a race, I want my own lane.
Yeah.
And I don't want anyone else occupying it. And then I thought, let me have a little run through my mind of, there's a few artists that I can think of that occupy their own lane.
Yeah.
One of my favourites and one of the best concerts I've ever been to has got to be Jamiroquai. They're in their own lane.
Yep.
I don't want anyone else in Jamiroquai's lane. I want to hear him do what he does.
Yep.
And I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean?
Absolutely.
If there's people out there who hold me in the same level of esteem and like my music, then I'm in my own lane. Join me in my lane and listen to it.
Yeah.
And let's make some more of it and see where this goes.
And the feedback loop from the industry or the people around you is to enable you to stay in your lane. Whether it's in the zeitgeist or not doesn't matter. Whether it's going to hit the radio or not. Actually, the point of what you're doing as an artist is that you found a lane, you have a sound, you know how, and it evolves, of course, as your music does. But you have the confidence of just staying in there.
I've always just wanted to make the music I make, and it just feels right and it feels nice, and it may sound simple, but I have to be enjoying it.
Yeah.
I really, because I can remember some moments in the last 35 years where, certainly in the EMI days, where I thought, even with me and Ian Green, when we were locked in the studio day after day on our own, and there was times where we weren't enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I do think that sometimes it comes across in the music itself or what you're making.
Definitely, yeah.
You're enjoying it.
And you've had some breaks from music and from recording music within over the 35 years.
Yeah.
And do they, and for different reasons that we don't sort of have to go into, but taking time away from either being in the studio and putting out new music or time away from performing, how has that been in your journey? And just in terms of the pace of and the demands of the industry and what actually is right for you to do as a human, rather than, you know, we need another record from you, or you need another tour from you.
Yeah. I mean, when I split with EMI, and I came out of that situation in the 90s, and I had to let album number 3 go, and didn't know if it'd ever see the light of day, and for 30 years it didn't. That was painful. But I knew I'd keep going. I knew I'd keep gigging. I knew I'd keep writing. And I do think that those break, I do remember thinking it was sad, but as time went on, I was relieved. I was relieved to be off of the treadmill. And it was good, because I was then my own boss again. I could do the gigs I wanted to do, and I did enough of them. I had enough of a fan base out there to do that.
Yeah.
And I could make the records I wanted to make, or even take a break from doing that, which was also good. I did a number of things, some dance stuff, and I put my vocal on a few featuring things some of them were okay. Some of them I probably regret, but I was learning. I was still, that's the thing. I've always been aware that even now, at my age of 56, I don't think I've ever stopped learning. I'll never profess that I've nailed it or I've got there, wherever there is. So in that sense, the breaks from it, and some of those were because, yes, there was periods where I had to look after my mum, who was very ill, and she eventually passed away the same age that I am now. And then my father, like I said to you earlier, there was when we were chatting before, he had Alzheimer's, and there was a period where single-handedly for a number of years I looked after him on my own, but I still managed to gig, and I still kept my hand in with writing. See, that's the thing on this album, for instance, you've got that. I mean, this single, Shout Out, which had a different title originally, and it's got obviously Kim Wilde on it, who's a good friend of mine, and she's sounding great.
Yeah, amazing.
That record's old. You know, the song itself I wrote with John Pern from Full Intention some time ago, and it's just sitting there in the bank, if you like. Yeah. And you think, well, why would you bother writing that? It's never going to come out. No one's going to do anything with it. And eventually, all these years later, here we are. Yeah. It's coming out. Yes, the title's changed. It's been rejigged and rewritten in a way. I've injected a different vibe in places. Got Kim Wilde on it, but it's not a new song. I was sitting. 80% of what you're hearing of that song was written some time ago. But you've got them in your filing cabinet.
They're in the bank somewhere. Yeah. So actually, you've never really stopped doing music. You may publicly have been less prolific to the fans, but it's always there.
And I didn't have the outlet. I didn't have the opportunity to put the music out. And when I did attempt to do some things like music, it was difficult to get it out there in the way. And as obviously, of course, the landscape was changing. Yeah. The internet was emerging, and things were changing drastically. Record companies and the music industry itself was changing. So, in a sense, you know, you might feel like you're a bit of an outlier, you know, you're out on the outside of it all looking in. But one thing that was said to me many years ago, and this was said to me in the early 90s, was, look, Kenny, really just keep going, because eventually, if you can look back and there's 10, 20, 30 years and you're still in the game, that's, you know, you may actually be taken very seriously at some point because you're still there, because you refuse to go away. So that might lend itself to the unstoppable title.
Absolutely. Well, I think, you know, longevity in this business and being able to sustain and stay sane and kind of live a life,
sanity is a big thing.
Yeah,
you can keep that.
If you can keep that and find a way to, you know, continue to do it as, you know, a career and stay true to your music and actually do what you want to do. It be enjoyable, like you said, like that's...
And the fans, let's not forget to mention those people that have followed me since the 90s, and there's some new ones along the way. You can't do it without them. I mean, I'm going out and doing these concerts, and they're the reason that I'm doing them. Yeah. Because they're buying the tickets to hear me sing, and they love the music, the old and the new, and I'm sure they'll love this new album.
So you leave Chrysalis EMI, and there's a period of time, and give me the year, kind of, or the range of years for this as well, just for context, where you're not on a record label, and so you're out in the wilderness, as you said. Yeah. But still doing music, still active, but just it's different. So what time is this? What years are we talking about?
So 95 was the last single with EMI, and then the third album, which was called Him, never came out. and that went into obviously a bit of a legal wrangle, and we agreed to disagree, and I left, and but I had to leave the album behind.
Yeah.
And that was painful, but as I say, eventually 30 years later, it did see the light of day. Now, that period, what happened was I knew there was a fan base, but clearly, because I was gigging.
Yeah.
That those thousands of nightclubs around the UK kept me very, very busy still. The only
And
thing,
you're getting paid at this
yeah,
point.
I was getting paid, so I was
Yeah.
earning, and but it was difficult to bounce back from that third album. I wanted that to come out, and we'd spent so long writing it, and some great productions on it, and some great players on it. Anyway,
You got shelved, to put
It got shelved.
put it horribly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. It got shelved by default, really, by the fact that I left and they didn't have me to promote it, and it was just like, it was gone. Well, ultimately, what happened was, and maybe you know this, but EMI really sacked everyone at Cooltempo. Everyone went.
Yeah.
The lot. Everyone I'd worked with for all those years were gone. Only left a couple of people that they absorbed into EMI. So there was no one there who had any connection with the record, or the people who had made it. They couldn't come along and endorse something, a product that they just sacked all the people that made it.
Yeah.
So it was gone. It was a goner. So I kept busy with the gigging. And there was a period later in the 90s, my mum fell ill. She passed away eventually in 1999, same age as me, 56. And then eventually after that, my father was ill with Alzheimer's, and I pretty much on my own was looking after him for a number of years. But I still managed to gig, still managed to write, still managed to get my vocal on the odd dance record here and there, like with Stonebridge and people like that. And then, obviously, clearly, the writing was a good thing to keep doing, because the first single, Shout Out, was written in that kind of early 2000s period.
Yeah.
And along with a number of other songs that I just kept in the bank and in the filing cabinet. So in that sense, it was good. And there was other things that happened back then, like I wrote with Bluey from Incognito. One of those songs ended up being cut by George Benson. I wrote with some other pop writers, like a guy called Paul Barry, who was a great writer, wrote, for Cher and Enrique Iglesias, and we wrote a pop record. Actually, I thought it would be one that I would keep for myself, but Rod Stewart took it.
Oh, amazing.
So there was things like that would keep you ticking over and make you, believe that, I'm still in the game for a reason. I'm doing the right thing, and this is still for me. Now, I'm not going to lie, there were some moments in that late 90s, and the early 2000s where I thought, should I bow out and should I go and, sort of
Do something else.
live on a mountain somewhere and try and do some navel gazing and work out the meaning of life.
Yeah.
But really, music
Kept you.
keep you going.
Yeah.
But the thing I would say is, in that period, there were some records that I made. There were some very good soul records, not commercial, and no real outlet for that to put out a record and have a hit per se. But they were records that were huge on the soul scene, and in some ways much bigger than the hits I had in the 90s. And that kept me in good stead. The gigs, the clubs,
And
the
these
soul
are
weekends.
12 inches. These are like 12s being put out on indie
Yes.
labels. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
on independence, and some of them very sneakily. If you take that third album, which I wasn't prepared to really let it lie in the grave where it was, and it had been a few years, and I ended up going to a DJ, some DJs I know, one in particular, DJ Bigger on the Soul Scene. I said, check that out. He went, whoa. He went, how long have you had that? I said, that's sitting on my archives at home, and it belongs not even really to me anymore. It's my song, and EMI kind of own it, and nothing's ever going to happen. So he went, give it to me. And he sort of distributed it very, very covertly amongst
it.
Yeah, not to make money, but he
Right.
just didn't even put my name on it.
Yeah.
Amongst some soul DJs. My goodness, that thing blew. Yeah. It blew so hard and powerfully.
Yeah.
And massive. And eventually I came out of the shadows and said, actually, it's my record, and it's me, and I can't do anything with it, but enjoy it, enjoy the moment and play it.
It'll come out
Eventually,
one day.
the album, as you know, sort of came out, and that was available digitally as well now, and it is available digitally now. But some people on the soul scene, some DJs who I really respect, say it's probably, they say some of that stuff was the best records I've ever made, although they haven't heard our new album yet. And a couple of them said, and I don't know what to make of this, whatever. They said it's probably the best soul record ever made in the UK.
Wow.
One of them, the track Him, Simon Law in production, 30-piece orchestra, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Written with Jonathan Butler, who's a great songwriter himself from the 80s. So I don't know, I'll let them be the judge of if they think that. If you think that, great.
Great, yeah. Well, and you know, that period, you know, end of the 90s to mid-noughties, the world of kind of artists self-releasing, you know, digitization of distribution, which, you know, the sort of democratization of artists being able to release music independently hadn't properly taken flight. So you still needed a label. That was still the kind of, there are exceptions, but generally that was how you had to operate. So the more underground route and bootlegging or kind of under the counter white labels was your path to sort of doing things, and obviously gigging. So
survival. It was survival. You're really back to street level. You know, growing up as a kid in Hackney, you know, you're used to that survival mechanism, and it really did revert back to that. You know, how do I get through? And there were some bleak periods. There were periods where you wasn't, you know, financially earning like you used to and stuff like that. You're ticking over and you're surviving, but certainly you're not sort of enjoying the moments you did in the earlier 90s.
No. Yeah.
But, you know, you're not, listen, there's food on the table and bills are paid, but there was periods where you think, wow, you know, this is really becoming quite a tough game.
Yeah.
But that suffering for your art is so true. You really do need to suffer for it, and then you appreciate it when it comes back, and when you're doing what you do, like I am now, doing bigger venues than I ever did.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my career in the early 90s.
Well, when Ed, your manager, kind of first got in touch about this new record, and he was kind of explaining to me how your live business has really grown, and perhaps some of the foundation of that is in that kind of soul family that you described, the kind of UK soul family where you've had these underground hits in a way, and this sort of embrace, and obviously the fans from the beginning have stayed, and you've kind of got this loyal fan base that are there with you on the journey.
And there are some that are rediscovering me. There are some that come into this concert and saying, I last saw you in 92, 93. I was like, wow. So to you, I've been away. I really have been away.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I've been busy gigging and doing the soul music and all the rest of it. But for them, I literally did disappear.
Yeah.
And they're now rediscovering me all these years on, and they're coming to the concerts, and that's amazing.
And you put a book out. You kind of wrote about this as well, I haven't read, but what I now want to
read. Have you got one?
I haven't got one. No,
I'll send one to
I'd
you.
love to have one. But I was reading a little bit of the fan reviews on it, and you feel that coming from the fans, this connection to you from the early days and stuff, which I thought was.
So the book, Bearing My Soul, I did that with an editor, Tony Horn, and great work. I mean, we did hours and hours of Zoom sessions going over all the details and lots of info. We could have written something that was like double the size of that. It was more about what we took out than left in.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that was a book about two things. There's two parts of that book, really, and I don't want to go on about it, but now you mention it, we'll say something. There's two parts of that book. Really, it's the 90s. It's the what happened, what went down, why to some it looked like I disappeared and was gone forever, and what was really happening in the background. It also has some mad moments. It's like, yes, I was the squeaky clean boy next door, jumping around on top of the pops. That was true. But there's also some rock and roll in there. There's some crazy stuff. Yeah. But in that sense, also, it's not the most typical pop memoir. But I thought I'd set the record straight and say we had some crazy times. Yeah. As everyone did in the 90s.
We like to party.
It was a crazy decade. Yeah. But once you've dealt with that, you can move into some of the serious stuff. And then the other half of the book really is the story of my life from 2017 to now, when my youngest daughter, Christina, fell ill and was diagnosed with a brain tumour. And that journey to this day, which is ongoing, the fight's still ongoing. But it really was a fight in those earlier years. And because the prognosis was poor, we were told she wouldn't see the end of 2017. we kicked back against the system, went over to Germany, pursued medical treatments there that you can't get here. You still can't get them here. And she outlived their prognosis, and she has done. It's now 8 years, 2 months, and she's still around.
Amazing. Yeah.
She's with us, but the fight goes on.
Yeah.
So that book really unpacked that. And the reason why I did that, and I thought that was essential, that second part of the book, was because so many people from the Soul family and the fans and the people when we did the fundraising, because to sustain those treatments in Germany was really something that wasn't possible. I tried. We was going to try, but it would have left us enormously exposed.
Yeah.
And so the people that rallied around us, the Beverly Knights, the Incognitos, the Omars, the Junior Giscombs, the Jackie Grahams, all the usual suspects from the 80s.
Yeah.
And then the other side of the 80s, the Tony Hadley's Go West, Living in a Box, Kid Wild, Nick Kershaw, Heaven 17. All rallying around to get things together so we could sustain those trips backwards and forwards from Germany and the medical treatments, and then another 2 years under a doctor in Frankfurt doing medicine from him, again, a medicine that you couldn't get here. And so really I owe that to them, to the people that helped us, and to let them know the inside track of the story and unpack that for them, but at the same time to say thank you, and because they're part of the journey. So the book's in two parts.
Yeah.
Pop, music, career,
Yeah.
and then the real drama of life and Christina's story, up to today.
Yeah. Well, and the title of the record, Unstoppable, seems to kind of have a place there as well in terms of the the positive power of music and a musical family and artistry and the artist community and all the music community around you that supported that, and how as a storyteller you were able to credit that back and sort of give something back to the fans, and I think it says a huge amount about your tenacity as an artist and the power of music that you believe in. I think it's a great story.
Yeah, they go hand in hand, don't they? I mean, it's tenacity, it's fortitude, it's a number of things. That unstoppable thing. I mean, the more I reflect on it and the nature of things with Christina, a story, and my journey as a family with my wife and our other children, and the impact it's had, but also arriving at this point now today where we've got a new album that's coming out, and it kind of, there is a weird interconnectedness of it all.
Yeah.
It's strange because I always used to say to people, I'm going back years now, I used to say about life, and this is probably more to do with my psychology and how I'm wired, but I always used to say to people, in life, in terms of progression as an individual and a person, and not necessarily measuring success by money or hit records and all of that, but just you as a person, if you're not going forward, there's no standing still. There's no staying in one position, standing still in life. If you are not going forward and progressing in some way, shape or form, you actually are going backwards.
Yes.
Because there is no standing still.
No.
It's like you're in a river with a tide. You're going against it, you're going up. If you stand still, it's definitely going to take you. It's going to take you downstream.
Yeah.
So you constantly have to be moving and battling against it and going up.
Yeah.
And that really is, that's me in a nutshell.
Well, and the positivity, doing that with positivity, and in your music, even though lyrically there's all kinds of emotions in there, love, there's reflection,
it's all about that.
It's all there, but it's positive. It has this infectiousness to it.
Well, Ed, my manager, said, I'm a soppy sod. And I know what he means. It is love songs. I mean, I grew up with that. My father's favourite singer was, he loved a lot of the singers, Sinatra and Matt Monro, but his favourite was Johnny Mathis. So, and my mum, she loved Johnny Mathis, but she was also half Spanish, so there was lots of romantic Spanish music being played. And they listened to all sorts. And growing up in the 80s, nearly all of those soul records were about love and heartbreak.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Even if you get later on into the Alexander O'Neill things like Criticise and Fake, it's all really about sort of still, what
it boils down to the same.
What's pulling on the heartstrings or breaking the heart.
Yeah.
So I think that, my music lends itself to that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where the fans, there's a connection there, right? They feel that, and that's where you have this hugely loyal fan base, and it shows in the ticket sales. So you're playing Hammersmith Apollo.
Wow,
which
we will
is,
be.
Yeah, amazing show to have on next year. So
when people say, yeah, we got married and played your record, or we conceived a child to your record, you're like, wow, okay, too much information there. Or even said, this person was such a fan, and your songs were played at their funeral. I'm singing it. I've got to do a song at someone's funeral next week. That's not easy. Me, the person that passed away is a good friend of mine, and she passed away, and her last request was for me to sing, and Tommy Blaze, right. Tommy out of who does Strictly.
Yeah.
And so I chatted with Tommy, and he's going to do a number, and I'm going to do a number, and that's the right thing to do. So yeah, music touches people in enormous ways.
It does.
And yeah, it has a real far reach on it.
Yeah.
Extends itself into all parts of people's lives. So I think that, making songs that have that emotion to it and that essence, it's important.
Absolutely.
Especially for soul music.
Absolutely.
Because it really does come from that. It comes from that background, that blues, that gospel, that, it comes from that.
Yeah.
That area.
There's a little bit of blues in some of this record. The track Walking...
A Walking Man.
Walking Man, yeah.
Yes.
That's got a bit of blues.
That's the one my wife wrote. Francisca wrote that.
Yeah, that's a great song.
Yeah, she sat down at piano and came up with that. And, I wish I wrote it, but I didn't. And so I cut that. And then obviously the remake of Thinking About Your Love is
beautiful.
Is something that's very different. Hearing that song in a way that is not been done. Again, that's her idea, not mine. Right. She sat down at piano and said, have you ever done Thinking About Your Love like that? And I went, okay. No. It's never occurred to me.
She's a pianist as well.
Yeah, she plays, So I said, no, it's never occurred to me, Francisca, that I would do the record that way, because I've always just done it in its format, its pop hit format. And she said, well, have a think about it. And we did. And here we are. We've done it that way. And it sounds lovely.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to wrap up the record, I think.
Takes it somewhere else. Breath of fresh air after all of those bass lines and beats and grooves.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Kenny, thank you so much. Great to talk about the record and learn a bit more about you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah, love it.
Thank you.
Awesome.